Welcome back to another episode of Before You Buy the Show, where we give you some straight-up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Get ready to hear the word Souls, because hi folks, it's Falcon, and today we're taking a look at the First Berserker Khazan, a name that sounds like an Eastern European RPG from 2009, but it's actually a Souls-like from Nexon. It's a tie-in project to the Dungeon Fighter online universe. And, Nexon from a ton of online only slop, and that might in fact lower your expectations a bit. I have been looking at this with great interest for a while. I have only recently learned how to pronounce Khazan. I thought it was Khazan before. But rest assured, I've had a little bit of faith in this project, based on the fact that it looks extremely high effort. And it's the real deal. This game comes off like it was made from old pros. Despite the fact that this is a first attempt by Nexon to do this, to do a Souls, like this is a highly polished game. It feels great to play. The difficulty is intense, in a way that feels right. Might I add, if you're into Souls likes, I think you will find something to like here. Souls like, now I'm not saying the game's perfect or anything, there's some issues that I do want to get into later, but they absolutely nailed the most important part of making one of these games, and it's the controls. Khazan just feels so smooth to control. There's hardly any stiffness to be found here. It feels smooth, buttery. It's very good. It's kind of one of those things that's tough to quantify because it's all based on feel. But I mean, it's really essential for making any action game fun, not just Souls-likes. And while this is a Souls-like, it's maybe a little less about slowly plodding around in heavy armor, and more, it leans more towards flipping out and kicking the out of everything in your path. This is an aggressive game, and it lands it as far as Souls-like mechanics go. The game has just about everything you'd expect. There's perfect blocks, perfect dodges and parries, counters, burst attacks right out of Neo, and a whole lot more. You get 3 weapon types, each one has their own skill tree ton of depth. There's one really good feature, so you can re-spec your skills anytime. That means you can experiment as much as you want with the dual blades, the great sword, a spear. There's only 3 weapon types. That might not sound like a lot, but each weapon type feels completely different in practice. And they're very fun to play around with. The great sword, devastatingly powerful, slow wind up. But once you got a few skills, you can combo all day long, jump all over the place. It's a weapon that forces you to commit to every attack, and it can be dangerous. It's a high-risk weapon, but it's a high-reward one too. Fear a lot more about stamina management and timing. You can unleash some devastating combos with its after-image attacks, but it takes some setup. You're not just pulling that off, and you're not doing the kind of damage the great sword is putting out. One way or the other, Spear is more about destroying the enemy stamina bar, and that's really where it excels. I think if you understand that you're going to like the Spear, it's useful, dual blades, probably the most traditional weapon in the roster, and also probably why you get them first, at least until you start unlocking all these like dodge enhancing skills that you zip around the battlefield. Each weapon feels really fun to use. They're all, with the right combination of skills and armor sets, overpowered. I'm not much of a min-maxer, but that's the impression I'm getting. If there's one thing that is a little bit disappointing about the weapons, that you can only have one equipped at a time. Like, you can't quickly swap between weapons like in a lot of other Souls legs. It's unfortunate, but like, it's not much of an issue because each weapon has enough going for it that I don't feel like I need to switch weapons on the fly as far as the story and the settings go. There's not a whole lot to be excited about here. It's generic fantasy action game stuff. Setup is good. If a little typical presentation, however, lavish is probably the right word. Great looking cutscenes, strikingly detailed art, the cel-shaded look, gives this game a really distinct visual identity. Like, it's just on the characters, the backgrounds don't have it, there's just something really unique about it too. Like, we've seen cel-shaded characters before, but something clicks here that doesn't click elsewhere. You're Khazan, a general who is betrayed, and in a totally unforeseen twist, wants revenge. So our man gets possessed by a blade phantom, you know, a phantom of the blade type, I don't know. And it's up to you to bring balance back to life and death or something. It doesn't matter, like, it's coherent, and it's maybe even more coherent than a lot of these games usually are, but it doesn't make it a lot more interesting. It's fantasy boilerplate stuff. I mentioned it a minute ago. It hasn't changed in the last minute or anything. The presentation though, and the overall quality is what elevates it. There's solid like voice work, an incredibly like gloomy soundtrack that just nails it. It all just has the right feeling to it. One thing I appreciate also about Khazan, it always feels like you're making progress, even when you might be stuck. There's souls, of course, and you lose them when you die. You gotta run back and get them. But there's a lot more progression systems, where you're in no danger of losing anything. Skill points generate separately from souls, and you never lose them. Gold is always earned when killing enemies, and that also never gets lost. There's so many upgrade systems too, like phantom abilities, which are spirits. You can unlock, which give you bonuses depending on which one you've got equipped, and they also level up, give you better bonuses. There's also Khazan memories, where you unlock permanent damage, increases and multipliers. It's a lot. But none of this stuff is actually all that complex. It's all in service of making it feel like you're consistently getting stronger even when you're not. Let me tell you guys, I needed some positive reinforcement at some points. This game is brutal. Like, it's definitely one of those easy level, hard boss kinds of Souls. Like, not because the levels are simple, but because the bosses are just that much more difficult than everything else. It's a game that throws a final level boss encounter. Like at boss number 2, it's nuts. He doesn't just look like a final boss either. He fights like one, he's switching between 5 different weapon types, like he's the soul of Cinder. And yeah, you actually had to kill him. It's not one of those times where you're supposed to lose later bosses. They're not easier, but at least the game's difficulty doesn't feel quite as steep. Once you get the hang of everything, the early hours of Khazan are sink or swim trial by fire type stuff. It is mercilessly difficult, but to the game's credit, the combat feels so good, it's easy to jump back in. For attempt number 12 or whatever, you don't even get any assists for this fight. The game does introduce a summoning mechanic for boss fights, but you don't really get to access to it until the 3rd boss. It is a very... Also, I want to add this. It's very parry heavy, perfect blocks, dodges, essential stuff in this game. You also got to manage your stamina. Draining enemy stamina, essential mechanic as well. When an enemy's stunned, you can perform a brutal attack that does a bunch of extra damage, completely refills your stamina, meter, restores your health, and again, like Neo, human enemies in this game have their own stamina, bars that get depleted when they attack. So attacking when they're tired out is effective monsters. In most bosses have standard stun meters, chip away at boatload of health, blah blah blah. Know that. You know the drill with that kind of stuff. You do have to learn the game's tricks, or the bosses will just walk all over you. That's kind of really the key here, the perfect blocking and dodging. It's pretty forgiving in terms of timing. And as difficult as most of the bosses are, the developers clearly put a lot of work in to make sure that they're readable boss pulls and attack. You're going to at least have some idea it's coming. Like, they did an absolutely excellent job of making the boss attacks intuitive. The second boss just has an absolute shitload of a variety of attacks, some really long combo strings. Even the first fight, though, I was pretty consistently blocking most of the boss's attacks. That doesn't mean it's easy. Oh, you will find even early in the game, you need almost perfect precision to get through some of these boss fights. But in the many hours I have spent with the game, I got to give some serious props. I've noticed no wonky hitboxes or jinky stuff. It all feels right to play, which means it feels fair if it's going to be hard, but feels fair. That's good. That's a very good thing. Also, solid variety of enemies in terms of both the regular enemies and the bosses. I guess the game's pretty long overall. It's a Souls-like, but it really gives you your money. Money's worth. It doesn't have the 100+ boss count of Wukong, but there's a pretty respectable number of them here. The game's split up into levels. They're split between regions, and you access them all from a central hub, structurally very similar to Nioh, which is sometimes linear, sometimes more open, but levels that culminate in a boss fight. In fact, a lot of this game is really similar to Nioh. The random loot, the mission structure, the way side quests work, where they're chunks of previously completed levels you access from the map, the stamina system. There's even Kadamas. Yeah, they're trying to throw us off, calling them pots makes us all think Elden Ring. But no, it's Kadamas from Nioh. The Phantom's basically just guardian spirits. It's all so close. I was starting to wonder if Team Ninja secretly worked on the game or something. But no, it's just derivative Souls-likes in general are going to be derivative. They're called Souls-likes. Kind of hard not to be derivative to some extent, but Khazan, it's super derivative of Nioh, maybe even dangerously close to just straight ripping those games off. There's no reason they needed to copy Nioh's bizarre side quest structure exactly like they're practically identical in the way they're presented. But for all the things that it does at a very, very similar to Nioh, it does enough differently. The combat stands on its own, as does the unique and striking art style, which looks pretty fantastic in cutscenes. Especially, I really like the hub solely unlocks new paths as you progress through the story. It's fun to explore and uncover hidden secrets within. Another thing I really like is that it's got these really unique magic spears that you can throw that consume spirit energy, also pretty powerful abilities you can be assigned to different button combinations for as much depth as the combat has in this game. It gives you a lot of tools to feel powerful in a way that some other Souls-likes just really don't. And as much as I appreciate the actual level design, I'm not going to lie the levels themselves in, and maybe theme. I'm not 100% sure exactly what does this, but they're not always interesting outside of the kind of generic medieval fantasy setting. Most of the places you go in this game kind of foggy and uninteresting looking. Don't get me wrong, a lot of the art's real good. There's some real cool looking locations here, but a lot of the time this game is coated in a thick layer of fog, and there's never really epic vistas or interesting things off in the distance. It's all grayed out. So you get these situations where the game pans over to give you an epic view of the environment while revealing the name of the location. And it's just kind of a bunch of vague shapes in a sea of mist. I don't know, sometimes it has a cool effect, but it's pretty much all the time that it happens, and it doesn't feel cool every time the opening snowy mountains don't make the best first impression. Either they're pretty boring, but later chapters take you to far more complex areas that are a lot more interesting to explore. There are better ass-like levels out there, but these are far from the worst. They're quite good, actually. And while there's maybe a little bit to Khazan ripping off Nioh, Khazan has a much better enemy variety. It goes a long way into keeping things fresh, when the levels don't always give you a lot to look at. The real draw here, it's the combat. It's fantastic. Perhaps it is some of the best in the genre. Honestly, there's enough depth to keep you experimenting, but it's simple enough to keep things focused. There's no complex magic system or stance changing, and in this game's case, that is for the better, and it may not matter that much to you. But the game runs great in my time. It's been pretty much entirely bug-free. I had one crash to desktop on PC, that's it, which is rare. Experience otherwise has been totally flawless with maxed out settings, and the resolution just cranked all the way up, runs perfectly on a PC that's at this point a couple of years old. It's a well optimized game, it's all very polished, works right out of the gate, and there's not something I can say for every Souls-like all around. Just a really solid game. Better than I think a lot of people expected this one to be. Its derivative in the generic fantasy setting aren't like going to blow your mind or anything, but it's so well made and slickly produced. It just doesn't matter. What does matter? Difficulty is extreme, especially at the start, and I'm not saying it matters from this is a good game or bad game perspective. It's something you should know going in though. Once you start jing with the mechanics, it gets a lot easier, but the bosses are no joke. If you don't want to deal with that, you can always play it on easy. It does have a setting for that, and no disrespect to anybody who uses it, and I can't stress this enough. Some of these bosses here are absurdly hard, even compared to the standards of the genre. This game does not mess around, but to its credit, it never cheats. It always feels like it's playing fair every time you die. You know why you lost, and it only takes seconds to jump back into fighting a boss over and over again. Isn't as disheartening as it can be in other games. So the First Berserker Khazan generic sounding name? Fantastic Souls. The story isn't terribly interesting. The visuals in terms of environmental design can sometimes feel meh. But everything else about this game is absolutely excellent. If you are a sucker for Souls-likes, it doesn't break the mold or anything. But the lack of originality doesn't matter when you do it like this. Well, seriously, this is, as far as Souls-likes go, a pleasure. But what do you think? Leave us a comment. Let us know if you like this video. Click like if you're not subscribed. Now's a great time to do. So we upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe, don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter and book me on Cameo. Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on Game Ranks. Oh hey, let's see the jars you've collected. Oh, only 6. Wow, the others must have ran off really far away. Hey, looks like you're becoming quite the jar enthusiast.